Ocasio-Cortez and her bullshit. How she like jumping around. We're gonna talk a little bit about Spanish history and how it correlates to today's America and how. What up, David Banner? How you doing, brother? And we're gonna break this down. We're gonna talk. Glad I got my chat room working. What's up, Juice? Yeah. Cause we gotta talk about it. It's a double-edged thing. It's both. It's a both-and thing. People are. Yeah. I'm good. I'm good, David Banner. I'm good. Kyle said, "Yeah, they sugar niggas." Hey, that's funny. That's funny. Yeah, we're gonna keep it light because I don't want this to be a hateful thing. I just want this shit to be informative. I don't want to get into I don't want to major in the minors, but I do want to talk about this from a political standpoint. And, from that standpoint, not so much from a hateful or nothing like that, because I ain't got no hate in my bones for nobody. But we do have to understand who we're dealing with culturally. What's up, Reggie? Yeah, so AOC is over here trying to play, political joust. She's trying to play both sides of the fence. Look at this here. This is AOC. We all know what she talked about the last couple of days when she said Latinos are black. But let's go back to what she said when she was explaining her own race, February of 2019. I don't want to play the interview, but basically here it is. You can look up the interview. She's talking about her identity. She's trying to play all sides of the fence. My identity is a descendant of many different identities. I'm a descendant of African slaves. I'm a descendant of indigenous people. I am also the descendant of Spanish colonizers. She sort of put that last for a reason, because that's kind of what she identifies as. Then she went on to say, that doesn't mean that I'm black. It doesn't mean that I'm native, but I can't tell the story. So on one hand, you're saying you're descendants of African slaves, you're descendants of indigenous people. But look, she says it doesn't mean that I'm black, it doesn't mean that I'm native. She didn't say it doesn't mean that I'm not a descendant of colonizers. So I'm just taking her words for it. We're not gonna get into the history of it yet. I'm gonna get into the history a little later. So far, I'm just using her words, what she said a year ago. It don't mean that I'm black. It don't mean that I'm native. But she did not say it don't mean I'm not a descendant of Spanish colonizers. She left that one open. You notice that? Now, black folks talking about reparations. She talking about something. Yeah, Latinos are black. We need to have conversations around race. When they are. Genetically, they're black. But culturally, can we say that they're black? At least not the ones here. Because when you're dealing with the Dominican Republic, when you're dealing with Mexico, when you're dealing with these Spanish countries, even still Cuba to an extent. Cuba's the best out of all of them, but that's why they don't like Cuba, because Cuba don't really pay the colorism like that. You're dealing with countries that deal with for real colorism. For real colorism in those countries. Your skin tone, your shade, that determines basically the job you can get in Mexico. Mexico has millions and millions and millions of black people. You had, 3 mass migrations of black people to Mexico. Well, really 4. You have the indigenous who's always been there, going back to before the Olmec. And then you had another wave that came during slavery. More slaves were sent from Africa to Mexico than to the United States. And then you have the people who were slaves in the United States that escaped to Mexico, who still live in that Tabasco region to this day. You don't ever see them here in the United States. They get discriminated on. Like, Mexico didn't start counting as black citizens until 2015. Think about that. Think about that. These brothers was there before any of these European cats got there. They was already there, but they didn't start getting counted on their census until 5 years ago. That's the colorism that people bring to the United States. We got to talk about this for real, for real. Let's go into talking about a little bit of history and why it disturbed me that AOC is going around. You know, she's not claiming black, she's not claiming native, but she isn't necessarily not claiming the Spanish colonizers. Who are the Spanish colonizers? Let's go into that. Now I don't want to sign up. Let's go back in before we get to how they came here to the United States. Let's go back into Spain. We all know. Well, if you don't know, you should. I'm gonna tell you right now. The Moors, the Black Moors, control Spain in the south of France from the year 711 till the year 1492. The Moors, you know, you had different divisions of Moors. That's where all those castles come from in Spain. All those huge castles, that was built by that. That's where the whole Gothic thing comes from. Like those Gothic buildings, that was built by the Moors. All those old buildings, they were eventually when the Black Moors were kicked out, the Visigoths took over those buildings, and that's why those buildings are now called Gothic. But those were originally Spanish castles and temples. Moorish castles and temples built by black people. Well, we had our run up in there in Spain, but you know there was a lot of division between different Moorish kingdoms. You had the Phoenix Moors, the ones who enlightened people, and you had the Dragon Moors that would go around just slapping the shit out of people. So you had two factions. But when the Moors were there, they brought rubbing alcohol, medicine, raised sidewalks, lighted pathways, running water, air-conditioned buildings. They brought technology into Europe. They saved Europe from the Justinian plague when they got there, because had the Moors not come, Europe just could have been wiped out from plagues alone. This coronavirus ain't got shit on the Black Plague and all these different plagues that was going on in Europe at the time the Moors got there. Well, in 1492, after a series of defeats from the Moors, Isabella and Ferdinand defeated the Moors and kicked them all out, kicked all the black people out of Spain. And if you stayed, you had to change from a Muslim name to a Christian name. And they kicked the Jews out of Spain, which is where you get the term Latino. The Latinos were people out of Spain that were Jewish, and the first Latinos that were kicked out were sent to the Dominican Republic out of Spain, not from Africa. So we got to get that part of history straight. The first slaves to come to the Americas came from Europe and not from Africa. So since they weren't allowed to, and so you had that dynamic going on when you dealt with Spain. Other things you had going on is what was I about to say? You had the Latinos. I lost my damn train of thought. That's where you get the running of the bulls from. When y'all look at Spain and you see them having that bullshit running of the bulls ceremony, all that is them kicking the black people out of Spain, because during the Inquisition, the Reconquista, the troubadours were chasing all the black people who remained in Spain out. And people were like cutting their heads off with axes and machetes and shit, chasing them into the Mediterranean Sea. That's also where the Inquisition is where you get the story of Dracula from. He was Vlad the Impaler. He was a warrior up there in Spain. He was known for killing them black Spanish and eating them literally. And that's where you get the whole Count Dracula from, Vlad the Impaler. So yeah, that's a little bit about the history. So why am I bringing that up? That was the mindset that perpetuated the world. The Spanish were the first people out of Europe into the Americas to to take over lands. The reason a lot of Europeans weren't allowed over because the Moorish, Spain, the Moorish, they control all the sea rights. They control all the seafaring knowledge, and so they couldn't get on those boats because the navies, the Moors, the Moroccans, and basically the term Moor, a lot of people thought it was synonymous with the people who ran the seas. So basically, it was among the black people on the high oceans up until about 500 years ago. And so I said that to say, the Spanish had that whole attitude towards the Moors that they made them, the people that they let lived, the ones they didn't kill had to be converted to Christianity, and they went ahead and then sent that Christianity shit over here to the Americas. And these are the people that, when the Spanish came to the Americas, the places that they colonized, when they raped the people, they mixed in and they actually claimed, the fathers actually claimed the offspring. Versus like when the British and the Dutch and all the French, when they raped the people, they didn't claim the offspring. It was like, nah, you the little nigga, get the fuck away from me. You ain't my kid. The Spanish actually claimed their children. And so they had that whole thing in Spain to where, the closer European you were, the more access to rights and benefits that you got. That's how Spain kept control of these colonies without direct, outright totalitarian type authority. You divide the people up themselves and let them fight it out. And the Spanish are the ones that came up with this colorism thing. The lighter you are, the more access to wealth that you get. And that's been breeded into the people in Latin America for over 500 years. They have the whole, like, most people in Latin America, they know they have an abuela, a dark grandmother, but they generally have this whole practice of getting with the lightest person you can get, so you can be as light as you can be, so you can have a greater access to resources. And so, although yes, they're genetically black, culturally, if they bought into the Europeans' mindset of lightening themselves, of whitening themselves, that means they bought into the European culture. And that's why if you look at, I used to work at a bank, if you talk to 10 people who are Latino, who remember Latino is not a race, it's a ethnicity, it's not a race. If you look at them, they have the option of checking white Hispanic, black Hispanic. Most of them go white Hispanic, not 8 out of 10. And these motherfuckers be looking darker than George Lopez, and they'll still have white on that identification. So if a group claims white, if a person like AOC claims being part of the conquistador class, that means they show you how they look at the people who they consider not from that class. The mistake people make generally is they look at the people's skin tone and they don't look at the culture in which they claim. You can only assess a person by the culture in which they claim. You can't look at a person's skin tone or their nose or their hair and then just assign what you think their culture is based on how they look. That's actually cultural disrespect to do that. You have to let people talk and let them tell you what culture they are, and we'll let them tell you where they come from. And when they tell you what it is, you then make a judgment based on the history of that culture and that culture's history against your culture, your people. That's not racism, that's wisdom. You need to understand cultural analysis, and I know a lot of times people don't have time to look it up, but I'm a fucking nerd. I love studying this shit. That's why I'm talking to y'all. I'm giving y'all the information. And if you think I'm lying, you can just look up anything and hit me back. If you got any deeper questions, or if I'm saying something wrong, hit me up, let me know. All right, we're going to go a little deeper. This is how deep it was. Christopher Columbus. You see, this is biography.com right here. I'm just letting you know where I'm getting this from, biography.com. A lot of people say he was Italian, but then that basically got washed away. And then they say, okay, if Christopher Columbus wasn't Italian, if he really was Spanish, because they say basically they think that he comes from the Genoa area of Spain. But no, he said he came from the general area of Italy. But now they're concluding that no, he doesn't come from that. He probably comes from the Aragon Kingdom in northern Spain. And they say that because his primary language, as you see right here, was Castilian. There are no documents in which Columbus used the language of Genoa, so that's how they're coming to their conclusion that it's probably Castilian. Castilian is a language that's similar to to Yiddish. But again, using the word, he was raised Latino. Remember, I told you a little earlier about the Latinos. You see why he didn't claim Spanish, because he didn't claim Spanish because if he claimed Spanish, they would have knew he was learning Ladino, which is basically what the Jews speak of Spain, and he would have been cast out. So the only way he was able to run his game on Queen Isabella and get all that money to have all those explorations was to say he came from Italy, because back then niggas didn't have internet, so they couldn't look up his past. So if he said he was from Italy, it's like, fuck it, you from Italy. Wasn't no way they could tell. But Columbus ended up being exiled by Spain and arrested, and his body is still in the Dominican Republic now because he was a damn war criminal. He was a thug. So you're talking about a person like AOC claiming to be from this class of Spanish. That's basically what she's saying when she says what she says right here. I'm a descendant of Spanish colonizers. Doesn't mean I'm black. Doesn't mean I'm native. She's telling you who she is. But at the same time, when black folks are talking reparations, she now want to say Latinos are black. The fuck out of here. Not if you claim white on your ID. Let's talk about this, man. And that's another thing. Latino basically means lands conquered by the Spanish colonizer. Like, that's not even a real, like, that's a label that Europeans threw on people, on basically native people who speak Spanish. Culturally, there are huge differences between a Chicano whose family was never moved out of California, whose family's been here in California for hundreds of years and never moved out. Culturally, they're closer to a black person raised in the Crenshaw district than they are a Cuban who moved to Florida after Batista was kicked out of Cuba, who left because Castro came in saying, "Nah, you can't practice that colorism shit." So since they couldn't be racist, they moved to Florida. Culturally, they're way different. But on paper, they're categorized the same, Latino. Do you think someone from Mexico in the Puerto Nuevo region or Tabasco region is the same as somebody from the Dominican Republic? They way different culturally. And I'm not saying one culture is better than the other. But think about this, black people. Culturally, New York people and people from the South live totally different ways of living. The good advantage that we have here in America is we all still understand that culturally we have these little small differences, but we still black. That makes black Americans different than people who claim black who come from over here, oftentimes from Latin America. They get to play this game of hopscotch, where it's like from that movie Robin Hood Men in Tights. I'm on one side, I'm on the other side. I'm on the East Bank, I'm on the West Bank. Remember Dave Chappelle, that part? That's what people do with race. And it's to our detriment as black people because we don't get to do that. And at the same time, shit gets cracking in this country. We don't have the option of going anywhere else. We don't have a home country to go back to. This is it. Africa ain't going. You think Africa will accept us in mass? They don't want to give us dual citizenship now. The best we can get is right to abode in Ghana, and all that's full of red tape. All right to abode mean is you can live here until we feel like saying you got to go, and that's not act like that doesn't happen because you got the paper bag. You got the bag people down tonight that happened to the people from Ghana by the Nigerians. You have a lot of these Nigerians talking all this unity stuff. Ask about them 2-3 million Ghanaians that was kicked out of Nigeria. This shit happens all across the world over class and cultural differences. You speak to someone from Nigeria, you speak to a Yoruba, but let an Igbo walk up in there and watch them start set banging on each other. And don't let a Hausa come in. It's about to be a civil war in that bitch. We in America, and Black Americans, we don't understand that these people from other nations, they have these cultural classisms that was imposed on them by the Europeans that they still practice. It's going to be upon them to start practicing these cultural classisms before we can fully accept them in. That's not our jobs. We've been trying to do this. Matter of fact, we've already cleaned house. Like, Black people on a plantation played that shit, field nigga versus the house nigga. But we realized in the early 1900s that shit wasn't going to get us nowhere. We realized because we was directly under slavery and Jim Crow in the belly of the beast here in the United States of America, the home foundation of racism, we realized that we used to that brown paper bag test. Even the Boulay realized they had to stop that shit. And yeah, we may have these little small set banging differences, LA people versus Houston people versus New York people, Crips versus Blood. We play them little bullshit games, but we all know when the white people come around, they see us all as one big nigga. We understand that. We need our Latin brothers and sisters and Caribbean and African and people from across the diaspora to understand that too. Those little cultural paper bag skin tone games that y'all play, these tribal differences, that's to your detriment. That shit ain't no good for us. But at the same time, we ain't got time to be teaching other people what's good and what's not. They gonna have to figure that shit out on their own. You see what they doing to us, how they killing us out in the street. You think we got time to unite the world? The world got to come together with itself. We got to stop playing the Captain Saver race. Because you got people like AOC who play both sides of the fence. Because these people, they play both sides of the fence, but when it comes time to the benefits, when it comes time to the minority loans, oh, they sure minority then. When it comes to minority college admissions, minority job, minority this and that, oh, well, yeah, I'm Black then. But when they get that job, how do they treat your Black ass when they become your supervisor? Let's just tell the truth. 9 times out of 10. We want to go there? Colonized coon. You right, Andre. Got a lot of colonized coons out here. So that's really what I wanted to say today. We have to know that the history between the conquistador, between what AOC calls the Spanish colonizers and the Black, goes deep, a long way back. That's why I want to say before I go. That's why, remember when Obama was in office, they kept calling him a Muslim. They knew he didn't worship no damn Islam. But Muslim, historically, in the minds of the European, means Black. When you see the United States at war with Afghanistan, with Iraq, that's an ongoing war that's been going on damn near 2,000 years between the Christians and the Moors. The only way Christianity became a damn thing was because They saw after the fall of the Holy Roman Empire, the Islam got its shit together in the 600s, and Islam started to take over the fucking world. Islam went down into Africa, and they colonized the minds of the Africans, and they started the slave trade in Africa. Remember that. So when people tell you your original religion is Islam, tell them to go to hell. No, Islam is your original colonizer. Don't let people pull that shit on y'all black people. They're your original colonizer. That's why all that slavery is going on right now in Libya. That's where the shit started. They went into North Africa, and your people who were in Egypt got chased out of Egypt, your original Egyptians, around 600 AD, and they got pushed through North Africa into Mali, into Nigeria, into Morocco, into West Africa. And then at the same time, they created new colonies, the Songhai Empire, the Malian Empire, which were better empires than anything out of Europe. And throughout the while Europe was going through its medieval times, you had the Songhai Empire that created Mansa Musa, the richest man of all time. So that was going on but that was being spread through Islam, and but the Muslims was coming down. Actually, those were people that was kicked out of North Africa due to Islam, and then later sacked by Islam in the 13th, 14th, and 1500s. The Christianity thing was a counter because the Muslims was taking over all this land. They were taking over Europe, and the Moors, they were Muslims, but they were also Christian Moors too, but their predominant religion was Islam. That's where you get those big old Gothic temples in Europe come from the Moors. Those are originally Muslim temples. And so Christianity became a thing that united Europe, because before Christianity, you had your Visigoths, your Vandals, your Anglos, your Saxons, your Berbers, all these the Celt, all these different tribes that did nothing but fight each other. They all united under the term Christian. And when they united under the term Christian, that basically meant white. That was before the term white became a thing. Back then, you were Christians or you were Muslims. And these are the people, the Christians, that came over here to America. Oh, that's one thing I want to say about Spain. Let's talk about one more thing in Spain. Remember, they came to the Americas before the United States. They came in the Luis Vasquez de Leon in June 1526. Founded a colony down there near the Petey River in South Carolina. That was 6 decades before Roanoke Island. Roanoke was where the first white woman was the first white settlement in the United States, and all them motherfuckers died within a year. They was all eating each other and shit. They couldn't. That shows you. Roanoke shows you when white folks from Northern Europe came over here by themselves. They did it without the black people. They couldn't make it because they all died. Well, anyway, Ione, his whole little settlement over here in the Americas got thwarted because the Africans that they brought, the Moors that they brought over here as slaves, beat they motherfucking asses and ran up into the mountains and amalgamated with the dark-skinned Native Americans that were already here. So when they tell you that black people weren't already here, okay, how can the people who were brought here as slaves from Spain, who was from African descent, how did they go ahead and mix in with the natives if they didn't look like them already? Ask yourself that. So there's always been a long, drawn-out negative history between Christians and Moors, and Christians and Muslims. And if you're black, you better rest assured that you classify under the Muslim category. It don't matter what religion you practice. We saw that under 8 years of Obama. They met this motherfucker in Reverend Wright's church and still called his ass a Muslim. That's code for black. And people who identify as conquistadors, as conquerors, these are people who historically do not like your black ass. Don't look at their skin tone. Look at their mind. Because there's a lot of cool ass Latinos out there who see through the bullshit. Fuck with them. Be cool with them. But get to know people first. Don't just look at their skin tone. Because this shit go way deeper We as black people, we always project our humanity on the other people. We think other people think like us. We think they see that these white folks is oppressing everybody, and we just gonna get together and fix this shit. And that's not necessarily what they see. You have other minority groups who've accepted their position as second to the white supremacists. As long as they keep their foot on your neck, they get their trinkets and benefits and extra money and all this shit and extra recognition. As long as they don't challenge the position of number one. And you have people like AOC, who, according to her own history, her own words, believe. That's all I wanted to break down. Thank y'all for listening. I need some water. I'm about to be out. What's up, David Bannerman? Yeah, I don't know who said that first, but yeah. Y'all got any more questions in the chat? If you ain't got no questions in the chat, I'm about to be out. Let's see. All right, cool. No questions? All right, y'all, we out.